hardest part about looking at review videos is usually the people that shoot them don't have an effing clue what they're doing. And they'll give you nothing for in comparison in size. Gentlemen, this is my humble little starter kit stereo system that I have in my little tiny wannabe truck. This thing is designed so I can haul stuff in it still. No, I don't have a giant speaker box that goes literally from the very edge of the back of my seats to 15 inches from the roof. No, I don't have 12 200-pound woofers in this truck. I have one. This is my continuous duty Crown A6000 GTI 2-channel amplifier that does 6,000 watts RMS per channel continuously forever. If you can feed this amplifier current long enough, it will continue to do that until the cows come home, Jesus comes back and learns how to play a flute through his wrist and knows how to do the trombone with his big foot and the other wrist in the way. Therefore, it makes it vastly superior to all the other amplifiers that have come since it. I hate to break it to you all, in my opinion. That's just the way I think about it. A lot of the amplifiers that we have today, they can do the power output rating that they're giving you in a burst. They don't have enough heat sink. They don't have the proper airflow. They cannot get rid of the excess heat from the inefficiency of the transistors. They just can't. That is a 12-inch subwoofer. I call it Megalodon. Why do I call it Megalodon? Well, because it's about damn near the biggest 12 that I think has ever been built. It weighs 110 pounds. The motor on it's 850 ounces. It has a 4.5-inch voice coil. It's a dual 1 ohm setup, and it was made by a company called Jason Jones Designs. He's in Salt Lake City, Utah. Well, actually, he's in Ogden, a little bit north. That is a bad mofo. It's got 4.5 inches of total speaker movement in and out. Now, you guys all clicked on this video because you were looking to see the difference between the Skar and the Sundown. Well, I've been running this speaker now for a couple months. I'm going to pull it out, set it aside for a hot minute, and I'm going to run the Sundown up in here. But I wanted to pull this out, and I wanted to give you guys a comparison. And let's actually do a real YouTube video and a real comparison between a Skar, their latest model, and Sundown, their latest model. And we're going to do it without using a bunch of swear words, and we're going to do it without playing music, and we're going to do it without showing speakers throwing back and forth, making noise that we can't even hear, and your headphones are coming through your television. So gentlemen, sit back, relax, grab a Coke, smoke a blunt. Let's get into it. This is like, I swear, comparing apples to like an elephant. Here, let's grab this little guy first. This is the zv6 version 2. And the reason I'm shooting this video totally is because when you see the amplifier or the subs on the internet, you get really stylized, pretty pictures of them where they've hired a professional photographer to come in and they put an all white background around it and they put all their little pretty bullshit in here. But you get a picture like this, and then you get a picture like that, and then if you're lucky, you get like this cool slide view where it's like, what doesn't tell you anything. So this is the top of the line Skar, okay? The V2 version, the zv6 version 2. They claim that this speaker can handle 3,200 watts. It can in a very short burst. You put much more to that and you're going to smell the coil pretty quick. It's just got a couple layer thick spider on it. It's got a really impressive voice coil. And there's lots of cooling on this speaker. Big slotted vents here around the coil. Nice opening on the pole here at the bottom, about 2 fingers width. Okay. Then you've got these extra holes here for better coil and better what they call pole cooling. All right. As the speaker moves through its operation, you have your positive and your negative side of the coil. And how you get that energy to focus back around so you can like lens it or bring it in so it's in resonance within the coil gap is the pole on the bottom. And it bends the magnetic field around. And the material that makes up the top plate and the bottom plate, pretty crucial. You have excursion and incursion, so your Emax and Xmax of motion. You can tell by the surround on this that we're going to be limited for the most part. The other thing that limits your in and out motion of the speaker is the length of the spider. Okay, let's get this little speaker out here. According to the book over here, before we run away on the skar, and this is stuff that you guys can go look up pretty much anywhere on the inner boob that you want to. It's got a 3-inch voice coil. RMS handling power is 1500 watts. They claim 3000. Like I said, that's total as far as I can tell, because you try to put 3000 watts to each side of this and it stinks pretty freaking bad. And it's got, for what it is, with the right size tune box, this speaker sounds pretty good for what it is. You're going to want to stay in the 1500 watt range peak going into this thing. Even though they claim it'll handle RMS, it'll only do it for a short period of time. A lot of that comes from the size of the motor. In my opinion, the motor is just nothing but the coil pack itself. Or not coil pack, but the magnetic ring pack that's on the bottom of it. Okay? The rest of it is what makes the motor work. Top plate, bottom pole plate, and then the voice coil. All right? Okay. The only thing your spider does is help keep the motor centered in that magnetic field. Your surround is what stabilizes and helps the directional movement of the cone. Okay. I'm telling you, this voice coil has got a lot of capability behind it. It's just limited by the spider, the surround, and the actual magnet, the motor size itself. This is flat bar stock that is mag wire on the inside of this. It's impressive. The coil on this was impressive. I pulled it out of the box and I went, holy guacamole, look at that. Let me get this little guy. This is a different animal altogether. Ugh. Now let me defend this with a preface. Okay. If I was to give this an honest comparison to something that Sundown makes, I'd have to go all the way back to their version 2 speaker. These are both 12s. And this is what I wanted to show to everybody. This is massive compared to this. There's almost twice as much magnet here as there is on this little guy. Okay, there's quite a few more spiders on this one. And of course our surround is a whole lot different. These both have stitch pattern. Now, in the land of SPL, that's a whole nother conversation that, you know, you guys can go have. Just so you know, it'd have to be the version 2 to compare the two. This is version 6. Version 5 is a little bit smaller motor, a little bit different coil. So the zv6 here has got an 8-layer coil to it, of course. This guy right here. So they claim that the gap between the motor, or the coil, and the pole plate is different. This allows for better cooling. It allows for more flex, in my opinion, too. You're going to end up having motor strike if you over-excurge or over-incurt or put too much power to it at the right frequency. This thing is going to oscillate or undulate just the right resonance, and it could kiss the inside of the motor pole. But the idea is, and not 99% of the speakers, is to prevent that. Okay. This has quite a few more spiders than this one's got. But then once again, we're talking deeper angle of cone. So now we're creating more cone depth, actual total surface area exposed. A little bit smaller dust cap. But the coil on this is just a little bit bigger, I do believe, and you can tell it just by looking at it. Bigger plate to give ZV more technical movement. Yes, da-da-da-da-da. Be more forceful, blah, blah, blah. And the zv6 version 12 is underrated at 2,500 watts. Well, we're going to put that to the test. I wanted to come out and I wanted to do a review of A and B. Because on the internet, when you try to do the comparison, you've got the kid that shows up and he's got Mama's CRX, you know, or a little hatchback or something, and he's got a box and he's just sitting there bumping it. Doesn't tell us anything really. Size says it all. And I'd love to have somebody that just put these in comparison to each other. There's only one other channel out there, and I dig him, that does this. Now, gosh, I hope I don't get another hernia from this. So here we are a couple days later, and I wanted to show this to you guys for comparison and size and the actual installation. It's all broke in. This is the Sundown zv6 that's in here. It's all broke in. Because this speaker requires so much less power than the Megalodon, it jumps right into distortion pretty quick, but it makes a lot of bass. I'll give it that. I mean, like a lot of bass, like a lot of bass. It's actually, I'm pretty impressed. As you can see, my speaker's bolted down. It's not held in by wood screws, so I'm probably going to pop this back out and put the Megalodon back in here today, which is such a pain in the ass to install because the magnet's so big it overhangs all the bolt mounts. Let me pull this out. We're going to put it back on a workbench and let's talk about some particular differences between the two. Okay, well, I got everybody here. I figure I might as well take a quick look at this. So this is the voice coil on the skar. So what we're looking at, let's see, I want to make sure I say the model right again. The zv6 12. What we're looking at is the size of the wire for the coil. That's really important because that's one way that you can express power handling capability in the coil. That's just one way. Another way is the multiple amount of wraps and its overall length, and I mean there's a lot of factors there, but when you look at this voice coil, that's like flat bar stock. Okay, it's pretty some pretty stout stuff. I mean, for an idea of scale, the machinist ruler, right? Look how stout that coil is. Now, let's pull back here a little bit. Let's go back to auto. Now let's pull back a little bit. Let's talk about the cage structure of the basket. You've got a vent here at the bottom. Your side poles are open. And you've got all this open space. Plus you've got the pole vents on the bottom. It's about a finger and a quarter job worth of opening there. Look at that. Direct access, plus you've got a pole vent here on the bottom and the top. Lots of airflow. Now this has a very small, let's turn this and let's take a look at the tinsel leads that come off the cone from the coil. You see those? Once again, let's get out the little machinist ruler, pocket ruler. We'll slide this in here for scale. It's dual tinsel lead. There's no doubt about it. But they're really, really itty bitty tiny tiny. Now let me reset for the Sundown. Now I can't get a ruler down in through the only vent that's on this Sundown. But these coil windings are about half the size of this for the voice coil. Let's back up and let's look at the actual basket. Now because they're both anodized black, it's really hard to tell that there's a difference between the Sundown and the skar. This portion of the cone, or the cage, is blocked off, where this is wide open, but they've got a spacer plate on the top part of the pole for the motor, and so this vent is literally twice what this is. So on the bottom of the pole, on the bottom pole plate, we've got about the same amount of opening in the orifice for the center of the internal piston of the pole, but we've got a whole lot more vents. The other thing we got to think about is the total voice coil length is much, much longer on the Sundown versus the skar. And what I mean by the length is the actual tube structure that makes up the voice coil. This is taller. So that means as the speaker's doing its movement, we'll say at like 20 hertz, it's pulling in almost twice the amount of air and pushing almost twice the amount of air out of the back of the motor. On the inside is what we're talking about. The outside, not so much. This speaker really moves. Comparing these two once again is like comparing an apple to an elephant. Let's take a look at the Tinsel leads that are on the inside of this speaker. This is a pro on the skar, so I'm going to talk about the pro. The positive thing over here on the skar is this amount of space between your positive and negative post for your speaker. These are the same size orifice, and they have the same size. When I mean orifice, I mean the opening. This is basically the same and the same. The clips are nice and big. They're spread farther apart on the skar, which, if you take the connections and move them farther apart, we have less chance of having a short at the speaker. Even though I know that everybody should be using what they call a ferrule. That's a thing that you put on the end of the wire and you crimp it, and it holds all the little hairs of the wire together, and it allows for perfect compression on the fitting. To me, this is a negative. I'd like to have this opened up, but it's just me. I think it's neat that Sundown's got their name on everything. That means, in my opinion, a whole lot more buying power and a little bit more professional than this. I mean, at a glance, you'd think that these two baskets were made at the same company. You really would. They might come from the same manufacturer, but okay, let's look at the Tinsel leads on this versus the Tinsel leads on this. Look at them little tiny wires versus these. These are dual layered, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 total Tinsel leads here. This is 2 Tinsel leads per side, and half the thickness of these. So what that means is we're going to be able to carry more current and more voltage directly to the voice coil. Now, it does make the leads a little bit heavier, but in this realm, this department of speaker, that weight is a non-factor because there's so much electromotive energy that's taking place here, the ability for the speaker to move. So, like I said, once again, it's comparing apples to oranges. Well, gents, I'm done. In my opinion, well, it's not an opinion, a fact, is this speaker way outclasses that guy. And the whole reason I'm doing this video is because as I'm sitting here doing YouTube searches and internet searches, you could do a guy doing a review of this speaker and a guy doing a review of this speaker, and they'd never put them next to each other. Never. To do a one-to-one comparison. So I thought, well, why not put them directly next to each other, have the camera sitting at a flat angle to the speaker so we can see the height, size, and magnetic motor difference between the two, and we could get a little bit more reasonable comparison. Now, let me speak to all 3 speaker manufacturers, because maybe, I pray to God, this guy designs all his own speakers. Don't know about these guys, and so does this dude. I personally feel, this is just me speaking now, that we are in the land of custom things now. The only thing that's going to set you apart from all the other speaker manufacturers out there, because they're popping up like weeds, because let's face it, there's some magical mystic muju that goes on between the manufacturer of the speakers, and then there's a lot of it that's not. Short of the magnetic charge machine to charge the ferrous material, most of this can be commonly purchased through the web. What is going to set the speaker industry apart is your overall actual layout at this point. Because let's face it, the voice coils are pretty much common. The tinsel leads, the spiders, the baskets, the magnets, the pole plates. All that is stuff that you can, if somebody was determined enough, like this guy was determined enough, this guy's determined enough to figure it out on their own. If a guy's determined enough, you could pretty much create this if you wanted to, short of being able to charge the magnet, which with about $4,000 or $5,000 you could almost build the machine if you knew what you're doing. But I digress. These things, the small little details like getting the post farther apart, making sure you got the biggest tinsel lead and the most of them in town to carry the most amount of shit to the coil, getting the deepest shot of the cone so you're increasing more surface area, making sure you have the best X and Z max in the speaker that you can get. The other thing I want to point out is, guys, we don't have to stick with the way they did it in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. We're getting to the point where speakers are weighing 75 pounds, 110 pounds, 45, 50 pounds. Why do we limit ourselves on the way that we can mount the speaker? Would it not make more sense in future versions like the zv6 that maybe, just maybe, if we're in the land of actually doing things custom, that we could increase the edge distance of the basket for our mounting holes? And instead of them being round, we put slots in them. So instead of the edge of the speaker being, what is this thing? Let's grab this here. Instead of us having roughly a ½ inch worth of overhang, maybe we make this overhang 1.5 inches. That way we have a little bit more wood mass to bolt these things to than having the mounts directly up against the body of the basket. Like, we're going to get to a point, and I'm experiencing it with this. I dare not bolt this down with wood screws. If I was to get in an accident, this thing's going to break the wood screws and depart it, so I had to go with mounting hardware. And mounting hardware means, nuts, bolts, recessed or inversed freaking washers with teeth on it. I put a washer on this thing that is roughly the same for the hardware that's needed to hold this down. I'm hitting the edge of the basket, number one. But number two, you have to worry about the hardware maybe being cocked at a little bit of an angle. I don't even care if it's a screw. The baskets are right up against the edge of the universe. We're not. Let me back this up. Let me show you an old school speaker from the 2000s. We've come a long ways, guys. That's the JBL Grand Touring 10. This is back in the day. Look at how we had to cut the opening for a 10, and look at how far our point of mounting is from the actual body of the speaker. It was the same thing with the 12 and the 15 version of the same speaker. We were kicking this top flange, they were kicking it out, so we could get out into more wood mass to be able to make the speaker be more attached to the wood. Let's think about it. We spend all this money and time and energy on our boxes with, let's say birch and oak plywood, and hours upon hours upon hours working on our speaker boxes, and then we're going to hang all this weight on a ½ inch worth of wood. If it was me and I was making a custom speaker, I'd make this so it was like over an inch kicked out, and I'd put slots in it so we could slide the hardware in and out as needed. Just food for thought. Gentlemen, I gotta run. I got other stuff I gotta do. I'm gonna shoot one more video comparing this to that, and then I'm out of this for a little hot minute, even though I've got 4 other subs that are all in this class. Then I'm gonna compare this speaker to a bunch of others that are coming. And by the way, shout out to Down for Sound for providing this and providing this. And what I mean saying provide is, I went to the webpage, sponsored by my American Express card, purchased both of these speakers, but I did order them from Down from Sound, and I appreciate the t-shirts and the free voltmeter and the stickers. That's awfully cool, because if you ordered them directly from either one of these companies, you don't get squat. So big shout out to the guys at Down for Sound. I'm gonna shoot this other video and I'll see ya. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for tuning in. I know this is probably not what most people that subscribe to my YouTube channel are going to be interested in watching, but there's going to be somebody out there that's like me, that's doing a YouTube search, that actually wants this knowledge and doesn't want to sit there and listen to a video or see a video of somebody with their cell phone and a DME meter in the car, and there's no give us A versus B. Gentlemen, I'll see you. Click, click.